So we're back with Peter Aziz today, and the weather's nice today, so we're sitting out in the sunshine here. Going to have a wee interview about some more of his healing things. First of all, Peter, why is it important to be a giver in life?
Well, it depends where you want to go in life, but if we were working on an evolution and trying to be more in touch with the source, with God, well, the nature of the source is to give. If you want to be in that power, then you have to be in tune with that giving power.
So it's like when you look around nature, everything comes, like the trees give their fruit.
Everything gives, yeah, because there's no limit. If you're in lack, then you don't want to give, and then it's like staying in a negative state.
So how does that relate to, in your article you say, to get healed, you have to give?
Yes, because when you're giving, your heart is opening, and it's like the centre of your life force. If your life force is blocked, you're simply not going to heal.
Because surely when a patient goes to a doctor, they're there to get something from the doctor.
Yeah, but the doctors never make them better anyway. Poison them.
So basically you think coming to these workshops and learning to give is part of the healing process?
Yes, that way when people are both giving and receiving healing, it's more complete. They heal much faster that way.
Because they get inner strength really, because they realise they've got stuff to give.
Exactly, but also they learn to trust in their own power.
Okay, so is that why basically it's good to attend these healing courses?
Yes, so you actually work on each other, not just receiving all the time.
Can you talk a bit more in depth about causality?
You mean causality?
Causality, that's the one. My writing's pretty bad.
Well, the way we work in healing, we're actually seeing that causality is coming from the future, not from the past. So that people see time as linear, and actually that's not the way it is. We're always motivated towards the future, and therefore unless you've got the future goal of how you're going to be, you haven't got anything actually to work towards. Too many people get too stuck in their past in the healing. Although we're healing the past, one has to have a future vision of where you're going.
So it's a good idea then, therefore, when you're going the healing process, you actually set yourself some goals, and then that helps you grow. Exactly. And gives you hope, and that hope basically helps the body as well.
That's right. You can reassess the goals as you go along, but there's always some focus in the future of where you want to go.
So in general, a lot of people these days just go to their work, do their job, come home, watch the TV. Those people I think they're getting ill through doing that because they've not set goals.
Yeah, well, there's no life there, so it's like they have less quality of life. That's the thing. They're not really enjoying it.
So there's no. So that can bring us to the difference between a challenge and a struggle then.
Yes.
Because to get through that kind of life is a struggle, but to achieve your goals is a challenge.
Yes, because a challenge is there to stretch your strength, so you become more. The struggle grinds you down.
So you really have to set goals that are just outside your capabilities, but not too far.
You pick those goals that'll stretch you a little bit, basically.
So what's the difference then between happiness and joy?
Well, happiness is more passive. When you've got what you wanted, then you're happy for a while, you're content. And then afterwards you have to go and do something else, otherwise you get bored. Whereas joy is more in the action. After you've got what you want and you're starting to get something new, in that challenge you find the joy, when you're stretching yourself.
So that's why life's an ever expanding process. We need to keep challenging ourselves, and achieving the challenge we get the joy.
That's right. During the challenge you enjoy, and afterwards you're happy. So your life should then fluctuate between happiness and joy.
Sounds good to me. How can we retrieve lost opportunities? Say you had a dream once and it failed. A lot of people say you've missed your chance, kind of thing.
Well, no, you've never really missed a chance, because the universe is always giving you things, but one has to own why you lost it in the first place. You need to understand the lack of passion, the lack of responsibility that made you fail. If you can own that and achieve that responsibility and that passion, then you can do anything. Okay,
so if you try and achieve things, you might just try half-heartedly then, and you might not believe in yourself enough.
Exactly. If you fail and you don't admit why you failed, you're not going to actually overcome the challenge again, are you?
Okay.
You actually have to realise that there was lack of passion in the first place, or lack of responsibility.
You talk about the hero's path and the magician's path in retrieving these lost opportunities. Or is that just in general?
Well, there's two possible ways you go down when you're going through this kind of transformation. And when achieving a lost opportunity is such a transformation, it is a whole journey, because you've failed once before, and there's something you've got to gain before you'll actually make it now. Okay, and so this journey takes you through certain stages. So with the hero's path, like all hero stories, first of all there's a call to a challenge the person's reluctant to, and then they answer the challenge and they have a series of initiations. And then there's the return, which is both reluctant and eager. They're eager to come back to the world with what they've gained, but they're also reluctant because the journey itself became so beautiful. So those are the 4 steps of the hero's journey. The magician's journey is more involving a retreat. It begins with the conscious alienation from the past. then there's this rebellion against the consensus with direction and design. There's then withdrawal from the illusion for some time, which is self-imposed and temporary. And then there's what you might call the Promethean return, where after your retreat you come out with the treasures.
Okay. Can you explain the power of gratitude?
Well, gratitude has a certain alchemy which helps you attract more, but it has to be combined with value. If you don't value yourself, the gratitude doesn't quite work. A value and gratitude together produce an alchemy which keeps attracting more good things. So the more you gain, the more you're grateful for it, the more you keep getting.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically to stop the ego thinking it's made it, because you're always grateful.
Yes, exactly, because the ego always will use the positive feedback as how much lie back in and do nothing, whereas consciousness is always using it as a thrusting block to go forward.
What is the law of asking? Oh, sorry, what's the law of ask and it shall be given?
Well, in order to get anything, you ought to ask. And it's about questioning, really, because it's like your mind's exploring all the time, and unless you ask the right questions, you're not going to learn. But it's asking the right way. It's not asking a limiting question. Like if somebody might go wrong with something in his life, and they go, well, "Why does this always happen to me?" That's not a positive question. It's not looking for a positive answer.
Okay.
They're looking for an excuse. Rather, they should be thinking, for instance, like, "Well, what can I learn from this? How can I make the most of it? What strengths am I going to gain here?" These are questions which seek positive answers, which lead you to growth.
So they could look at somebody else and say, "How's that person always successful and I'm not?" To change that, they would say, "How can I learn from what that person
done?" That can be
done?"
a positive question, because they might actually look at what that person's doing and decide how you're going to succeed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The question could be, what can I learn from that person
Exactly.
to enable me to achieve something similar. In this world, some people say the great mystery of life. What do you mean by that? What do you think the great mystery is?
Well, if you could say what it was, it would be a mystery.
Yeah.
The thing about mystery, it is always unknowable. But basically, the source itself of all life, all power, is beyond our knowledge. It is mysterious, but one has to experience mystery rather than know it. You can feel it, and you can be in touch with it to give you power.
So how can you be in touch with it?
By going into the unknown, by allowing it to be unknown, and recognising that within that acceptance of the unknown there's a great peace, and this peace then produces power.
Okay, so we don't demand answers for everything, then we accept that some things are unknowable, and then that gives us
the real
faith.
truths are beyond the rational mind, therefore they'll always be unknowable.
In your article you talk about omega. What do you mean by that?
It's an energy. That's the name we give it because omega means endings. It's like the last letter of the Greek alphabet, and it signifies ending. It's an energy of ending, basically. It's an energy we can channel because it puts a stop, ends to things, basically. It's a destructive energy, like Kali energy, which destroys all the old negative patterns.
So how can we increase our connection to Kali?
Well, through worship, through mantra.
So that's really a spiritual discipline people have to...
That's right.
Because in a lot of the things we do, we kind of picture Kali or imagine Kali.
You can do that and simply call upon her and surrender to her. And you can use a mantra.
I went down to the river the other day and I meditated with the Kali music, and it felt as though this energy had came to me.
Oh yes.
My hands kind of got very, very tingly and stuff.
The Sanskrit chanting does trigger the power within you.
It's really beautiful. So how can we open ourselves up to miracles in life?
That's a big question, because it does require one to raise one's consciousness into a certain space where you're in touch with the miraculous. This requires the giving, it requires the responsibility, it requires surrender, and it requires setting goals which stretch us.
There's a combination of things.
Yes.
And the belief that they can happen as well.
Well, yes, one has to change one's beliefs, of course, but also one needs to know the choices behind those beliefs. See, many of the beliefs are chosen. Quite often you're choosing to believe something because you don't want to stretch yourself further.
What do you mean?
For instance, I might say I can't. Some people might say it's not possible because they don't want to have to go through the experience of trying and failing.
All right.
They're afraid of the disappointment,
and
so they don't even try. You can't possibly. Not possible if you never tried. That's purely an excuse. So this belief that something isn't possible is actually chosen as an avoidance.
I see. So can we use our higher guidance in these things?
Yes, so you need to meditate to make a connection to your higher self.
And how can we do that? Just through meditation, or is
just
it
by making time for it every day? You see, whatever you put your attention on is what's going to expand in your life. If you simply take some time to meditate every day, where you say, "This is my time with my higher self," something will grow there.
Okay. So our higher self, is that like our connection to the source, or is it like a lower level down than that?
It's in between. See, the source divides in certain layers. It's like from source to where we are isn't just one step. So the stepping stones in between our higher self is like the greatest we can reach for in this life, but that is only one stepping stone to the source.
And it is part of us, it's not like a spirit guide or anything.
More than we are
like that.
part of it.
We are part of it, okay.
See, the higher self is aware of all your lifetimes at once.
Uh-huh.
All these different lifetimes are just parts of the experience of the higher self.
And does the higher self have a life? Does that make
Well,
sense?
you're one of its lives. You see, the higher self is beyond time and space.
Uh-huh.
It scatters itself through its creation to experience it all.
Okay.
And what you are doing is experiencing one piece of that creation, one particular time and space.
Okay.
The other lifetimes are different aspects of your higher self.
Interesting. How can we manifest things? I know you manifest things out of your hands.
Well, that takes a bit of time. I mean, there's quite a high level of vibration to reach for that to happen. But first of all, manifestation isn't about manifesting things out of thin air. It's about letting things come into your life that you want, which can happen in a natural way. Anybody can do this just by visualising and trusting.
What are angels and how can we work with them?
An angel, basically, is an upper world being. It's a certain stage of creation. Angels are the guardians of the basic forces of creation.
Okay.
So they're very powerful forces, actually. So we need to work with them. One needs to learn some of the old techniques of sacred language and so on, so you can actually reach the vibration to kind of link to them.
So it's a very real realm that these angels inhabit.
Oh yes.
Because to me, when I hear the word angels, it's like this New Age people are believing in something that's not really real. But
well, quite often it does become very wishy-washy because they don't have the techniques to really work with it. So you have to use the ancient languages and the right spells, the right invocations to these angels. They're really powerful forces working with you.
What is the mythical mind?
It's way beyond the rational mind. There's part of our mind which doesn't work rationally, but does work according to myths. That's why myths have a certain power. People learn about myths because these have an effect on you. And these myths are built up inside you and affecting the way you behave, not in a rational way. But they have a very deep and profound effect on how you act.
Have you got an example of a myth that people believe in and act on?
Well, even if they've never heard of the myth, it can be acting. Like a simple example, one you might find within healing, within therapy, is the myth of Narcissus and Echo, which is one of the Greek myths where Narcissus, was the one who fell in love with himself, and Echo was the kind of nymph who was being neglected, so she ended up fading away to an echo. That's why she's called it. How Echo was named after her. She faded away to nothing through neglect. This carries out in families where you might find you have some narcissistic parents. The child is so neglected they feel like they're faded away to nothing. And this is how it gets passed on, and that child later has similar patterns. It gets passed on in the family. So you must see the myth acting within the family.
Right.
You can't find the start of it. There's a myth which is within that genetic line that's acting out. And that kind of thing we have to heal on the genetic level for that whole family to change.
So you mentioned these ancient languages, Sanskrit. Now that doesn't get used by any people these days, does it?
It's still used in religious services in India. It's not actually Indian. It's a sacred language. It's only spoken in religious rituals.
Right.
And in the Hindu and yoga, it's the language that's used in all the magic.
And you've mentioned before that these languages are stored in our brain, in our DNA.
Yes, the shapes of the letters actually are shaped in neuropeptide chains within our brains.
Right. So this is why when I was doing point holding the other day, I turned on the Kali music and the intensity got far more.
That's right, it's triggering these templates built inside you.
So that to me made this Kali, the thing you talk about, a lot more real in the Sanskrit language.
Yes,
and
see how it
I
works.
realised there is power in that then.
That's right.
What spiritual practices that people do can open you up to negative forces if they're not done properly?
Well, any spiritual practice shouldn't do that, but it is when you open yourself without a spiritual discipline you have problems, like drugs for instance. People use drugs to open, but they don't know what they're opening to. They can lead to all kinds of negative entities.
So people who smoke a lot of dope might do it because they think they're being spiritual in some way.
They're looking for something outside the normal reality and not seeking it in the right place. It'll open them, but then it opens to, all kinds of garbage. It opens you up to the astral in general, which can be negative and positive.
So even magic mushrooms can be the same as well?
Yes, all these things need to be taken in a sacred way.
So we need to really learn that in our culture, don't we?
Yes.
It's more than just abuse of these things. We have to respect them and
That's right.
and work with them.
Yes, because they can affect you, therefore they need to be respected.
Just talk about some of the things that you've healed or tried to heal. I like to talk about AIDS. Have you ever tried to cure anyone with AIDS?
I wouldn't say try to cure. I mean, it's like when I'm working on anybody, I'm not actually looking at a cure for any specific illness. I'm always looking at the whole person, give them healing and seeing where it goes. Yeah, but there have been people who've been relieved of AIDS. Now, I can't really say if it's actually a cure, because we're not actually seeing if there's a virus left or what, but they're certainly healthy. They can have quality of life for years to come.
And what was the difficulties in trying to cure people with AIDS? Because I know it's one of the hardest ones for
Actually,
you.
it's not.
No?
No, I find the cause of it is generally shame. Clear the shame out and everything improves. People, I've had people very seriously with AIDS, and it's like when you start point holding, all the organs regenerate, everything becomes healthy, and they have quality of life back.
And the AIDS is gone?
Can't really say. It's like I'm not looking for a virus.
Right.
And to tell the truth, I don't really care the virus or not. Because that's not what I'm looking at.
So
I'm looking at the person's overall health.
The most important thing is they feel a lot better after.
They're healthy and they're alive.
Uh-huh.
What more do you want?
Yeah. And what about motor neuron disease? What's the cause of that, and how do you cure that?
I've found that as a huge energy leak in the heart chakra. All the life force is draining away, and that's where they start numbing out and losing the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often there's been a very deep emotional pain, and something just split inside, and the energy's all leaking away. And quite often that can actually lead to a negative entity that's in the heart, consuming the vital energy.
So your first job there is to go and get the negative entity out?
That's right, and then we have to heal that deep wound, which it requires some really deep emotional healing.
And is that done by point holding?
Yep, it can be part through point holding and part through forms of shamanic healing as well.
Uh-huh. What about multiple sclerosis? Because a lot of people think there's no cure for that.
No, I've had a few multiple sclerosis patients coming out walking out of wheelchairs.
Multiple sclerosis, that's the one where the nerves, the kind of protective coating of the nerves is damaged.
It begins with small crystals forming in the brain and the spinal cord.
Uh-huh.
And these crystals are, like all the crystals in the body, are forms of emotional suppression. Basically, the basic thought behind it is they've lost their nerve.
Alright.
So you can see there's a fear pattern here, there's a lack of courage, there's some disappointment.
So they may be carrying this from childhood, they may have had a tough childhood and suppressed
Yes.
this very deeply, and,
This has been often the
kept on
case.
suppressing it for years and years and years.
It's often the case that a lot of the multiple sclerosis patients I've had a very negative condition from childhood where they expect life to be a huge struggle,
Uh-huh.
because that's how their childhood always was.
And again, you just do your shamanic techniques, and how do you give people their nerve back then?
You press the points.
Just press the
When
points,
the
yeah.
emotions come out, everything heals. It's that
Okay.
simple.
Can you talk about the herbs that you use, and which particular ones do you use most, and how do you use them?
Well, there's many, but first of all, we have some standard herbs for each organ when it's going through a healing process to help it cleanse. Like we often use dandelion and milk thistle for the liver. Might use berberis for the kidney. Lungworts for the lungs, comfrey for the large intestine.
Okay, so
So we have some
depends.
standard ones we might use, chamomile for the stomach, but obviously it can vary. You can go into more detail, we can look at the fine points of the herbs.
Uh-huh. And how do you administer them? Do you just eat that herb, or do you have to prepare it in a special way?
Quite often you can just eat it, or you can just make a tea out of it.
Okay. Can you talk about the flower essences that you make and the power behind them?
These flower essences are vibrational. We simply take the flowers, we place them on floating face down in a shallow dish of water in the sunlight for a few hours, and we kind of play with it. So the spirit of the flower blesses the water. So it's simply using the energy and the consciousness of the flower rather than anything chemical.
But it must depend then on your level of prayer, your training and
It always
expertise.
helps, but anybody can make a flower essence, but obviously if you're more in tune with the flower, you can get it to put more power into it.
Okay. Well, thanks again for your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.